The Independent Investigations Office is looking into what led to a grade 10 student being shot and killed during a confrontation with RCMP on Sunday. Now, the IIO, in any case where police interactions result in serious injury or death, will investigate the actions of police. And there are hundreds of these kinds of cases every year, but very few of them actually result in charges being considered against the officers involved. And for more on this, we're joined by JessicaBerglund. She is the Chief Civilian Director of the IIO. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Stephen.
Thank you so much for coming in. There is, of course, a lot you can't say right now about what happened in Sunday's shooting because your investigation is ongoing. As it stands now, though, the IIO won't even confirm that this is a grade 10 student, even though that is being widely reported. Why not?
Well, in every investigation, Stephen, it's really important to keep as much information private as we can. The main consideration we have is always the privacy of the family. So in this case, this teenager's family, we want to ensure that they are not subjected to a lot of publicity. Also, specifically in terms of, it's now out in the news, so I think spending a lot of time focusing on whether this was a teenager or youth or his age or his gender, that fact is out in the media. But generally, early in an investigation, we really don't want to release any information that might contaminate witnesses who have seen the incident. So before we can independently verify facts such as age, such as gender, whether an individual is carrying a weapon, we want to keep that very, very lean.
Sure. I can see why you wouldn't want to talk about, whether an individual is carrying a weapon, but basic information like this was a 15-year-old boy. Is it not in the public interest to be able to reveal something about the circumstances of what happened and who the victim was?
Yeah, and we did do that. We did issue an updated media release 2 days ago that provided additional information. We didn't go as far as to say the age of the of this boy. But as you know, that is there. Again, if there was a particular element that we deemed was in the interest of public safety, if there was an ongoing safety concern, if we thought other teenagers were at risk because of what had occurred, of course we would release that information. But in every file, we are we spend a lot of time thinking about what information we need to release and the reason for releasing that information. Always balancing our desire to be transparent in the public interest with just trying to keep the investigation as tight as possible and respecting the privacy of the affected individuals.
And I understand that. And certainly police will always withhold information about any investigation because they don't want to, taint potential, witnesses or people who may be offering information. And they certainly don't want to taint a court case. But it seems to me, I've been, covering police issues for a long time. And before the IIO, police would release a lot more information than they release now. Now, within sometimes minutes of an incident happening, they say, we can't talk about this because the IIO is now investigating. So they're not talking about it, and the IIO isn't releasing any information. And so this is an organization. The IIO was founded to provide more accountability and transparency and independence, and it seems to be doing the opposite.
I guess I would throw back to you then, what is the particular, in this case, public interest in knowing the age of the
Police shot and killed a 15-year-old boy. Do people not want to know about that?
Yes, people want to know about it, and that is why we are conducting a thorough, detailed investigation. And as you know, all of our investigation results are published once we finish our investigation. And if there's any information we need to release during the investigation, we do release that information as well.
On average, how long does it take to complete an investigation?
We're averaging about 75 days for most investigations at this time.
Really?
Yes.
Because sometimes we see reports that take often years.
They can take years. Obviously, the more complex investigations take longer. An investigation such as this, where there is what we call an officer-involved shooting, that will take longer because of the number of witnesses who need to be interviewed, as well as the fact that we will likely need to obtain expert evidence to give us an opinion on what happened in this case and whether the use of force was reasonable. So yes, some cases can take longer. As you also know, and I know your guest spoke to it yesterday, when we have a file that gets referred to Crown Counsel for consideration of charges, that can take longer too because of the additional time that is spent on the charge assessment process.
Right, the whole secondary process
Yes.
that takes place after that. But even when your reports are finally released, there's not a whole lot of information often or a whole lot of detail released in them. We don't, for instance, we never learn the names of officers who were involved.
No, and again, that's to respect the privacy of those officers as well. But we do release the information of the agency where that officer was employed.
We know that already.
Yes, and that is, again, you know that there's privacy legislation in British Columbia and the Police Act as well that do restrict how much of that information we can release. But I will reiterate that we will always release any necessary personal information that needs to be out there in that either to protect the public interest or that we do believe the public needs to know.
And how often, out of all the investigations you might do in a year, I think we put some numbers up yesterday that were, I think it was a single, in the last annual report, 2023, 2024, I'm trying to remember, 280-something incidents?
We completed 218 investigations.
218, okay, thank you.
And of those, about 83 of those result in some kind of public reporting. So a lot of the notifications that we get in the investigations we open in a year are ones that are concluded very quickly, primarily because the mandate of serious harm or injury or police action or inaction is not met. About 83 of them result in some form of public reporting.
Okay.
And of those 83 in 2023-24, 7 of them resulted in a referral to Crown Counsel.
Okay. And out of those Crown Counsel referrals, how many of them resulted in actual charges?
Again,
or recommendation of charges?
Given that approximately 4 of them, and that varies depending on the year the incident initiated in. So I have a standard for referral, which is if I review all of the evidence in a particular investigation and I have reasonable grounds to believe that a criminal offense may have been committed, that matter will be referred to Crown Counsel. As you're probably aware, Crown Counsel has a different standard for approving those charges, and that is whether there's a substantial likelihood of conviction and whether the prosecution would be in the public interest.
Right.
So there is a different standard in that case, and we apply different decision-making to the facts depending on what stage of the assessment we're at.
And I know it's not a substantial likelihood of conviction. It's a different phrase. What is it exactly?
No, it is substantial. Substantial,
okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
for the charge approval standard.
Right, but
Yes.
but in your case,
No, it's lower. It's reasonable grounds to believe that an offense may have been committed. So it is a lower threshold.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be on that substantial likelihood beyond a reasonable doubt.
Okay. How much of how long it takes to do anything at the IIO has to do with resources and the resources you have?
Well, luckily, and my predecessor, Ron McDonald, did a fantastic job on this. He managed to get approval to fully staff our agency so we now are at full complement. We're down 1 investigator and we're experiencing normal attrition levels. So I feel confident that our timeliness is going to improve. I've been in this role for 5 months and I have already seen the files moving more quickly in the time I've been there, particularly as our new investigators come online and become experienced in doing investigations. I would also say that a lot of the conversation has been around charge approval and conviction, and that narrative that really we should be prosecuting or charging more officers.
Right.
I came from a background at WorkSafe BC, leading the fatal and serious injury investigations team there, and we spent a lot of time looking at are there other ways to influence behavior other than through that very blunt instrument of a prosecution, and I would like to see more work done, whether it's by criminologists or others, as to whether, other than prosecutions, how do we influence police behavior, improve police behavior, or improve public confidence in policing in ways other than through prosecutions.
Right. And so you look for ways other than prosecutions to try to improve the behavior of police?
Yeah, we do. In our public reporting, if you have read those reports, we often will I will provide commentary on something that is not of a criminal level, but it's an improvement, something else that could have been done through training, particularly around de-escalation techniques, how we respond in many cases to a person who is in crisis. So there are many, many ways that police can improve their policing other than being motivated strictly through a prosecution.
And at what point are police held responsible for their actions?
Well, they are held responsible in those cases where we have prosecutions. I also think public pressure generally can hold police responsible. There's also the separate complaints provision through the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner.
How cooperative are police departments with your investigations generally?
My experience so far has been a high degree of cooperation. We have some constraints under the Police Act and our guidelines, and that is we simply cannot compel an officer who is possibly the person who committed or who was responsible for the action. They are not compelled to speak with us or provide us their evidence. So we do sometimes have a gap where we can't get at that first person evidence as to what happened.
That strikes. Why are you not able to compel that person?
Because if they become everyone has the right to be free from incriminating themselves in a criminal offense. So we simply can't compel someone to speak against their interest. And that is why body-worn camera, for example, will be very helpful to us, because if an officer is wearing body-worn camera and we can review that, then we will be able to have that firsthand evidence of what happened in a particular incident. So I'm looking forward to when that rolls out more broadly and we're able to view that footage.
And what about officers who may witness an event occurring?
Yes, they are compelled to speak with our investigators and provide statements.
And do they ever not speak?
No, they again, we have...
We've just had instances where the union, for instance, will throw up roadblocks to try to prevent them from actually testifying.
And that is very unfortunate. And people who, unfortunately, under the Police Act, the IIO currently does not have an obstruction power, which would be very helpful for us to be able to take action against police officers who although they are obligated to speak with us, refuse to speak with us. So that is something I look forward to in the future. But that is a challenge. But generally, I would say police agencies are cooperative with our investigations.
And how often does that happen where an officer refuses to speak?
Very rarely, in fact. We get good cooperation for the most part.
And do you expect, how much difference do you expect body-worn cameras to make then overall?
I think it will make a significant difference. There are cases where we simply don't have any direct evidence of what occurred. There's no surveillance video. There's no closed CCTV.
Yeah.
And the witness officers are not able to provide much detail as to what happened. So it could be, I'm hopeful that it will be significant in some cases. But again, we have to wait and see as it's just rolling out now.
Ms. Berglund, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for answering the questions. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you very much. Jessica Berglund, Chief Civilian Director of the IIO. That's the Independent Investigation Office.